Hello and welcome to my channel StartLIfeOver. Today is the first video out of set of two videos when I would like to talk about how we gain and lose fat. Not weight, fat. This would be more theoretical topics to give you understanding, and as I always said, in order to achieve your goal, you need to understand what you are doing and especially why you are doing. So hopefully these two videos will give you understanding why you need to do this or that, or don't need to do this or that when you are trying to lose weight. And again, knowing how you gain weight also will help you to prevent gaining weight, because simple change in your menu, and you think it will be harmful, can change your process of lipolysis, which is losing weight, losing fat, to lipogenesis, gaining fat. So today is our video about lipogenesis, how we gain fat. Let's get started. So, lipogenesis. Lipogenesis is a process in our body of creating fat. And when I'm saying creating fat, it is not something intangible. We store fat in our body in the containers that called triacylglycerol. You can find it in the literature also like triglyceride. It is absolutely the same. But in form of triacylglycerol, this is how we store fat in our body. And in order to build this triacylglycerol, we need to do several steps. And therefore, I would like to discuss in this particular video how we build it. First step in this process starts when we consuming food. When we have food, especially carbohydrates, we start digesting process, and using some enzymes, our body decompose carbohydrates to last unit of sugar, which is glucose, and release it to the blood. So this is step one. And therefore, as I said in my video, good and bad carbones, the higher glycemic index of carbon, the more consistency of sugar in this carbon, the higher level of glucose, the more glucose would be decomposed and released to the blood. So, step one is done. We have team glucose in the game. Now, step two. Before step two, you need to understand one of the main concepts of biology, of human body, of endocrinology. Our organs, our cells, tissues, muscles have receptors. These receptors help our organs get whatever they need, hormones, proteins, enzymes, different molecules like glucose as well, whatever they need, and don't get anything they don't need. So this is simple. So when our glucose circulates in the blood, one particular organ in our body called pancreas has a receptor for easily get glucose in and out. So when we definitely have high level of glucose in our blood, definitely pancreas start getting this glucose in big volume. This triggered the process for secretion insulin. And here a little bit theoretical remark. 1% of our pancreas contains of so-called islets of Langerhans. In these islets, we have two cells, alpha and beta. So can you imagine how fascinating it is? Like 1% of fairly small organ in our body produce two hormones without which our body would be dead. very soon. So it is just a remark to give you understanding how our body kinda strong and at the same time very weak. But return back to the point. When we have glucose, high glucose level, our pancreas triggers in these islets of Langerhans, particularly in beta cells, to start secreting my lovely hormone called insulin. And if you watched my video about how I lose weight, how to lose weight and how I did it, I already mentioned that insulin plays key role in getting fat. And it is actually not insulin fault, because main purpose of insulin to reduce level of glucose, reduce sugar level in our blood, otherwise we will die. So it is actually insulin our savior. But insulin unfortunately doesn't give a shit about our weight, about our fat. And about 90 to 95% of this glucose will eventually go to adipose tissue. But get back to the step 2. In step 2, we trigger and secrete insulin, and using different protein and enzyme in our body, we release insulin into blood. So now, after step 2, two teams in the game, glucose and insulin. Again, in my video, how to lose weight and how I did it, I told that insulin helped to store glucose in 3 storage: muscles, liver, and adipose tissue, in our fat tissue. We are not talking about muscles and liver today, because it's only like 5 to 7%, and it is not fat, it is glucose. They are doing glycogenesis, doing glycogen. We are not interested about this. Today we are talking about how we get fat. So, after step 2, we have 2 teams in the game. Now, step 3. As I said, our organs have receptors. And some organs have receptors allowing glucose get into, but what is important, fat tissue have a gate that doesn't allow glucose get into. And guess how glucose get into? Insulin. Insulin binds to the fatty cells and start process that trigger this gate to be opened, that trigger this receptor to allow glucose get into. So it calls glucose uptake. So step 3, insulin triggers glucose uptake by our fatty cells. So we are done with step 3. Now when we understand how glucose gets into the fatty cell, our glucose would be divided to 2 parts. And try to guess what happened. Insulin, heavily engaged, trigger and support one part of glucose transformation to glycerol. This is step 4. Glycerol, this is building block for our triacyl glycerol. But insulin not done yet. Step 5, our second part of glucose, again using insulin or processes that triggered by insulin, transformed to fatty acids. This is second building block for our fatty storage. So this is step 5. We have fatty acids built right now. Now, step 6, combine glycerol and fatty acids. You can imagine it's like embryo with 3 tails. Now we have with this embryo with 3 tails, this is our fat storage created. We complete our lipogenesis. Now, let me quickly summarize what we have in this process. Step number 1. Our carbohydrates during digestion process divided and break down until the glucose molecule. Glucose released to the blood. Step 1 complete. Glucose circulate in blood and get into pancreas. Pancreas see a high level of glucose and trigger islets of Langerhans, specifically beta cells, to secrete insulin. Using different enzymes and protein, insulin also released to the blood. Step 2 complete. We have 2 teams in the game, glucose and insulin. Now, insulin goes to the fat tissues, binds with fat tissues, start process inside cells, and this process open the receptor for glucose, called glucose uptake. Step 3 complete. Glucose inside the fat. And now when glucose in fatty cell, glucose would be divided to two parts. And insulin will trigger and support part 1, transformation to glycerol. So this is step 4. Glycerol is one of the building blocks of fatty storage. And second part of glucose, again, with support of insulin that will trigger and support transformation of this second part to fatty acids, on the step 1 would be transformed to fatty acid. Now when we have glycerol and fatty acid, on step 6 it would be combined together, so we have our embryon with 3 tails, and this is how we finish creation of our fat storage. So we actually create fat right now. So lipogenesis complete. Hope it helps to understand how this process works and give you some thoughts what to do and what not to do in order to not trigger lipogenesis very regularly. Having said that, thank you for watching my video. Share this video with your friends, subscribe to my channel, send me your likes or dislike, send me your questions, I would gladly answer your questions, and until next time.